Call the meeting to order and we'll all introduce ourselves so everyone is present. We want to move right into the,
Ready to business?
yeah, we
Okay.
may as well get to the first hearing. We're on
Yep.
late already, so.
All right, so please take notice that an application was received from the following person for variance of setback requirements. Stephen Kennedy in Black Hammer Township for variance to reduce the township road setback for an existing building, a variance to reduce a property line setback for an existing building. A hearing on this application will be held at the Houston County Commissioners Room, City of Caledonia, Minnesota on Thursday, July 22nd. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying of said application. Comments should be mailed to the Environmental Services Department or emailed and must be received by Tuesday, July 13th. Comments in regard to the petition received by the state will be part of the public record and will be made available for review by the Board of Adjustment prior to the meeting, advertised on July 7th of 2021. So I did not, I guess we sent packets because of our having to push it back from June, but we did have an addition, or not an additional comment. I don't believe there was a comment originally, but we did have one sent in then for the second comment period. And because that wasn't in the original packet, I'll just read it quick if that works. Is an email from Dan Vestersee. Hi, Amelia, this is Dan, the adjoining property owner to Stephen Kennedy on Gadsden Drive in Houston County. I'm writing to you in regards to the variances for a couple of buildings on the Kennedy property. I have been a landowner using Gadsden Drive since March of 1996 when I purchased my first piece of property at the end of the road, and also in July 2001 when I purchased the property directly adjacent to Kennedy's and the two structures in question. I have also hunted at the same farm, which was owned since the late 1980s by Roger and the late Audrey Skauge, who is my aunt. To my recollection, the white enclosed pole shed was built around the early 1990s, and the lean-to shed was built around 15 to 20 years ago. Neither shed poses any problem for myself being in their current location. I have no problem with either one and see no need to move either one. Gadsden Drive also has been an abandoned road in Houston County since the early 1980s. Myself and the Kennedy this road. When I started going back in there for hunting in 1988, it was a dirt road where my property line now starts near the white pole shed of Kennedy's. There's never been any maintenance or upkeep on it from any township to include Black Hammer in Houston County or Preble and Fillmore County. I have built the road, rocked it, and kept graded and snow plowed since I've been in there in 1996 for the part in Houston County on my property, and have also helped Kennedy's maintain the section of the road that is in Preble Township by rocking, grading, mowing, tree cutting, trimming, and even fixing existing culverts under the road. I just wanted to include a little history in my letter stating my support of the variances for Steve Kennedy. Thanks.
That letter isn't quite telling the truth because that road isn't abandoned. I've been around a little longer than Vestersee has. That is a public road. And when I went to view the property, which I'm supposed to do, there's a gate across with a lock on it. So I called the supervisors in Black Hammer Township, one of them, and I said, "Did you close that road?" And they said, "No." They said, "That is a public road. You can drive in there anytime you want to." Well, I said, "What am I supposed to do with the gate?" "Drive it down." Well, I'm going to get a little bigger vehicle than my car when I do that. But I just wanted to make sure that you know that this letter here was that it was abandoned road. It's not abandoned road. It's still a legal township road. So and I wasn't very happy about it. When I'm supposed to go look at these sites, I look at all of them except this one. And then you got a gate across the public road. That doesn't sit well with me.
And I looked into this prior to telling them that this was going to be a requirement. So asking the surveyor's office, they said that we couldn't find any record that it had been vacated. And I believe it needs 40 years in order to kind of just become abandoned. And it's only at about 30 years, I guess, based on the last township road, when the last township roads were looked at and adopted. And so the surveyor told me that if he was to go out there, he would consider it legal township or still a township road. And so that's why a variance is not required. how, do you guys want me to go over the staff reports, or is everybody?
I think that would be appropriate, just brief as quick as you can.
Okay, so, what started this, Steve made a permit application. They're gonna put an addition, a dwelling addition on the larger pole shed. Everything is fine with that addition, and it's awaiting, or permits are all ready to go as, under the condition that the variance is approved. So he has, it's a little difficult to see, there is a small wood shed right on the south property line in the trees. And then there's another like smaller or medium-sized pole shed, I guess. So at the time that these were built, they did not require permits. We don't have anything on record, but the ordinance has always had the same property line setback and township road setback. So even regardless of the fact that it didn't need a permit, it still should have met those standards, I guess. And we also, I mean, the only time in which these are brought to our attention is oftentimes when permit applications are made, which was the case here. Other than that, it's a pretty standard. There's really no issue with anything else at this site.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Do you have anything else to comment?
Yeah, if you could come up and take a seat here.
Yeah.
That'll work.
So we have this property, well, a third of it is in Fillmore County.
Steve,
And
can you just sit down so that you're in the camera? Sorry, otherwise it's cutting you off.
This one here, or anywhere,
Yeah, you're fine if you can sit there. Yeah,
better?
thanks.
All right, so our property is in, third of it's in Fillmore County, 2/3 of it in Black County. And there's, the building site is about half mile off the road, off the county road. The building site has 3 structures. I'll call it a larger pole shed, a smaller one, and then essentially a 3-sided wood shed. So I put application for permit to make an addition on the larger pole shed. And through the process, it came to our attention that the 2 other structures were non-conforming. One was built too close to this township road, and the other was built too close to Dan Vessel's property. So in order to get the permit for the addition on the compliant building, I'm here seeking variance to keep the other structures in place. In regards to the concern about the gate, that was before me, and my understanding is that this was all handled in Preble Township, because again, where that gate is, where this township road starts, that is Fillmore County. And I would say 2/3 to 3/4 of this drive, this road, this township road, is Fillmore County. So they had a discussion, a meeting years ago at Preble Township, and at that time, Preble Township agreed to allow a gate across it because there's no other properties that are joining this township road. It's our property surrounds the entire road except for Vessel's at the end. So apparently that was the justification for allowing the gate. In exchange for that, the trade-off was that we had to maintain all maintenance of the road, which has happened for the last 30 years. So that's just a little history on the gate as far as that I'm aware of. Now, when I talked to the Black Hammer Commissioner, I think that Mr. Johnson, I believe his name, he thought the road had been abandoned by the township. So I think there's been some misunderstanding. I think technically, apparently it hasn't technically been abandoned, but so that's where we're at. But again, I'm just looking to get a building permit on this compliant building, but in order to make the parcel compliant, I'm seeking the variance to keep these other 2 structures in place.
So you have, your property in Fillmore County is on both sides of the road, that the Stetson
On the township road.
of the township road.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the county line comes within about 100 yards of the building.
Anyone have other questions for the applicant?
So do you have a permit on your building that was built 15, 20 years ago?
That was built around 2001 and
No, I didn't find permits for anything, but they would not have been required at that time.
Okay.
Ag buildings weren't required back then.
It wasn't
When
until 2004
did that?
that
Oh,
ag
four.
buildings, yeah,
Okay.
2004.
Okay. I guess no other questions. Next would be, you got any other questions from board members too? Yeah. Anyone from the public would like to comment? I guess that's the next part. Okay. We'll close it just for our board members then. Thank you very much for your information. I don't have any questions or comments before we go to the findings. Hearing none, we have to do that process. Can we just read them all in one? And if we, or do you want to do it the way we did the other board was doing?
I guess that didn't take too long if you guys want to, or probably won't be much difference in time if you just want to do that. I don't, sure you guys gathered, we're just, we're not going to do roll call votes, we'll just vote as a
Right.
group. If there are any that you guys want to comment on or have discussion on, this applies for all of them forward. We will, we can do that as we go, so.
Okay,
Perhaps to move it along, if we did each one and just simply ask if there were any objections. And if there aren't, we can just
move on.
move on.
Okay. I'll
If
do
there
that.
are objections, then we can have a discussion.
Yep.
Would that work?
Yes, I'll try that.
Yes.
Okay, so number one, the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of official controls. Analysis says that the applicant is looking to build a dwelling addition onto the larger pole shed, and that proposal meets the density requirement. This is an existing building site that they would like to continue to develop rather than remove additional agricultural ground from production.
Any questions, discussion on this? Go on to the next.
Two, there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls, and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Analysis says both existing buildings have been present for a number of years with no issue. Due to the size and good building condition, it is not practical to move or remove the small pole shed. While the wood shed is smaller in size, it was not constructed to be portable, and moving the structure may compromise its integrity.
Anyone? Go on.
Three, the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. Analysis is that ag buildings did not require building permits until 2004. A permitting process could have prevented incorrect placement of buildings. And previous landowners placed these structures, and it is presumed this location was chosen for development because of its proximity to the road and reduce the amount of tillable acreage moved from crop production.
Any comments?
Four, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty is sought. Analysis says that there are existing buildings, so a variance is the only reasonable method to achieve compliance.
Go ahead.
Five, that the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. Analysis says that the variance request will not alter the physical site in any way that has been in place for over 20 years. The county is not aware that the request is any component that will impair property values or affect public health, safety, or welfare.
Go ahead.
Six, that the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district, permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by state law. This is an area variance, and there is no floodplain in the proximity, and the proposal does not authorize standards lower than state law. Those are all of your findings.
The findings.
All in favor of the findings, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
So unanimous?
Unanimous.
Unanimous approval? All right, and then we'll, I guess, have to motion to approve them.
No, okay. I'll second.
Who, sorry, that's who.
Ken.
Ken?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and Larry seconded. All right, so that concludes so findings are approved then.
And the only thing with next part would be any other discussion, I guess, about a variance, the variances and a motion to approve the variance. That should be done.
So move.
Um,
I don't have the language.
I can give you, so it's a motion to grant woodshed and a 15-foot variance for an existing shed to Gadsden Drive.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Larry. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Roll call.
Ken Fisker,
Aye.
Larry Haffner,
Aye.
Ken Anderson,
Aye.
Franklin Hahn,
No.
and Wayne Renigan.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, that should take care of that one.
All right. Please take notice that an application was received from the following persons for variances and setback requirements. Philip and Sarah Brand in Yucatan Township for a variance to reduce the property line setback for an existing building. Variance to reduce property, and a variance to reduce the property line setback for a proposed building. Hearing on this application will be held at the Houston County Commissioners Room, City of Caledonia on Thursday, July 22nd. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying of said application. Comments should be mailed to the Environmental Services Office or emailed and must be received by Tuesday, July 13th. Comments in regard to the petition received by this date will be part of the public record and will be made available for review by the Board of Adjustment prior to the hearing. This was advertised on July 7th of 2021. Nothing changed in the board packet. I guess as far as comments or anything, I did make a little bit of a modification to the distance. So when we get to that point, I guess.
Okay, the applicant here.
Just kind of explain a little bit. So the variance for the existing building, that was put up in.
Make your name for the.
Oh, yes.
So first I went to get a permit to put up a new building. And Amelia pointed out that I never got a permit for the building I put up in 2018. Which I assume that the builder had gotten it. It's my fault. I should have known better, but I just assumed that they got it. I never built anything before. So she said we measured, I needed a variance for that building. I'm 45 feet off the property line, we believe it is. And then on the existing building, I needed to be in the yard somewhere where it's functional. I don't have a lot of other places to put a building. Besides all the pasture, I'd like to be able to get into it in winter time for cold storage purposes. There's an existing building there in the past that was torn down to my parents at some point. So it's kind of already a flat spot. I've leveled it a little bit. It's a nice spot.
Else, any board members have a question for the applicant?
What happens without a permit, then does anything happen? He built the building.
He had to pay an after the fact fee for that building.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yep.
I viewed the site, not that that makes any difference.
Thank you. Anyone else have comment on this application? Hearing none. Go on to any questions from the board members, discussion. about it. We'll move on to findings.
All right, so number one, that the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of official controls. Analysis says that these proposals include development within an existing farmstead, which minimizes impact to the surrounding natural environment. 2, there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls, and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Analysis is that the proposed use of both buildings is consistent with this zoning district. 3, that the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. The unpermitted existing building was the result of lack of communication between the applicant and the contractor. If the building had been permitted, any setback issues would have been discussed at that time. The applicant is hoping to utilize an existing concrete pad adjacent to an existing driveway to locate the new building. It could be considered unique that there was replacement of the building taken place in kind and immediately following demolition. It may have been administratively approved as a continuation of legal non-conforming structure. 4, that the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty is sought. Analysis is that the unpermitted building is existing and the variance is the only reasonable method to alleviate the noncompliance. The proposed building is adjacent to a driveway connection and will partially utilize a former building site. 5, that the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. Analysis says the Bridge Creek Drive consists of agricultural land and farmsteads. While this site does not include a large amount of tillable acreage, it is consistent with the character of other properties in this area. One of the sheds is existing and does not appear to have affected nearby property values, public health, safety, or welfare. The proposed building will meet the township road setbacks and should not impair visibility on the road. And 6, that the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district, permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by state law. A property line setback request is a use variance and does not permit a lesser degree of flood protection or standards contravening state law.
Any discussion about the findings? Maybe a motion to approve the findings.
I guess we can just vote on them first, like
Yes,
you guys normally do, and then, yeah, motion, I guess.
One motion for the whole findings.
Okay.
So moved. I move we approve the finding.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. So the next part would be recommendation of the variance.
Yes, so
Are there any conditions that you want on the variance?
I'm not recommending any, I guess.
Okay.
I kind of changed the distances a little bit, so make a motion to, or propose, here's proposed language, to grant a variance of 8 feet to the side property line setback for an existing building and 15 feet to the south property line for the proposed building.
Okay, I'll make the motion. The motion by Larry, so a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Kenny Visser. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. We are doing on time.
Money, we're on this one at 6.
We're supposed to be on this one already, so catching up a little bit. Okay, so the next one is James and Katie Bosch.
Please take notice that an application was received from the following persons for variances of setback requirements. James and Judy Bosser for La Crescent Township for a variance to reduce the total bluff setback and a variance to allow an accessory building near the front lot line in the principal building. A hearing on this application will be held at the Houston County Commissioners Room, City of Caledonia, on Thursday, July 22nd. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying said application. Comments should be mailed to the Environmental Services Department or emailed and must be received by Tuesday, July 13th of 2021. Comments in regard to the petition received by this date will be part of the public record and will be made available for review by the Board of Adjustment prior to the meeting. This was advertised on July 7th of 2021. I do have one note in your board packet. The proposed motion should actually say toe of bluff, and then it will be 25 feet rather than what was stated in there. Otherwise, he's looking to put in, I guess, kind of a background. So this area is actually zoned residential rather than ag, like you may have assumed in there. And so it's actually platted out, which is what La Crescent Township made him do at the time in order to add a second dwelling within that quarter. So this is actually on a different lot, but that lot and adjacent lot are not buildable as far as we could ever put a dwelling on. And so he would like to locate this accessory building right up to the edge of the building, or up to the edge of the hillside there, or to allow for like logistically for bigger trucks and stuff to back in or out of that driveway. Does anybody have any questions?
Is the applicant here?
Jim Bossart.
Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah. The biggest concern is a 30-foot travel trailer. And for me to try and get something like that off the state highway, I have a trailer on there. It's difficult. I don't have that kind of room. in my house. So by bringing the building to 25 feet, I put a dead center in the middle of it. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Not only that, but then it also puts it further in front of my existing primary structure too. So.
Okay. I know I stopped at there one just in the front driveway and looked back at it, and definitely the trees screen it so much anyway, we're proposing.
But when
But technically, yes. I
some of
know.
the other gentlemen stopped up to see it, the only thing that I would really do to change would be I want to take the knoll out from the land. It was like a logging road from the farm. And, put it down level with my lot. That's a pre-built building, so they just roll it off the trailer and that's Any questions? Any questions from the board?
Well, I'll make a comment. I looked at your place and everything's immaculate, so I'm sure it's going to be a good job.
There is some trees there into the bank, which he's not going to disturb. I don't know if you looked at it. Which I thought would be great, because then for erosion problems, see, there is a road there now to the other house. I looked at the site too.
I just glanced at it. I didn't go in depth.
The only tree is an old
Box elder.
box elder. And
Yeah,
that was gonna go no matter what. So,
And that
Yeah,
is,
I
that is
understand
next
that.
to the bank. That's down over on his lawn where that box elder.
and as far as drainage goes, I've got it well drained every way. It goes right down my driveway.
Yep.
And then the south and then out in.
Okay. Sounds good.
Any questions?
Board members, any questions for him?
No.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have comments on this application? Okay. Move on to the findings. I guess we have to do that.
Number one, that the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of official controls. Analysis is that the comprehensive land use plan encourages residential site design in such a way as to protect natural resources. Utilizing this location is the best option to do so. I guess we could have asked, did anybody have any issues before we got going, or take care of it as we go?
I think we can just go right along.
2, that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Much of this property is hillside. If the applicant had to move to lower ground, it may require a variance from the state highway setback and could potentially impact steeper slopes than this location. 3, that the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. This property has limited area to accommodate structures due to slope. Staff analysis. Number 4, that the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty is sought. Analysis is that without this variance, the topography would not allow the landowners the ability to locate any structure. Number 5, that the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. Analysis says that nearby properties are in the agriculture district, and then the building location in front of the dwelling would not be concerned. Adjacent properties have similar situations, so as a result, it will not alter the character of the location at all. This proposal will allow service trucks to turn around rather than back down onto the state highway, which is a much safer action. And number 6, that the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district, permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by state law. Analysis says that this request is an area variance and is a permitted use in the residential district. The proposed use is not in the proximity of floodplain.
Any comments or questions about the findings? Hearing none, we need a motion to approve the findings.
I make a motion, we approve the findings as read.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. So then we have a request for a variance.
Yeah, I'll read, since I had to correct that language, I'll read that quick. So it's a motion to grant a variance of 25 feet to reduce total bluff setback and a variance to allow an accessory building near the front lot line than the principal building.
Need a motion to grant that variance.
I'll make a motion, we grant that variance.
I'll second.
Motion and second, to grant the variance. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay. So what we're approving here is just the variance request. You'll actually need a separate building permit. The variance will stay with the land. There's really no expiration on it, but your building permit, once that would get approved, is good for a year.
Okay.
So, and you can just wait on that till you're ready then. So, yeah.
And the price of lumber is going down.
That's what I'm hoping. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we're a little ahead of the game now, huh?
You need to take time to get that call.
Why is that time?
We're right on, we're caught up. Time. You want to bring up?
Yeah.
And we are technically right on time.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead. Why don't you take that call?
Yeah, I guess if you guys need a second, because we do have a number of hearings here tonight, if you need a second in between one of them, just holler.
Parties are here.
It's only 30 seconds off.
Yeah.
We do have a little bit, yeah.
Oh.
I didn't do it.
Yeah, did you call?
Okay.
Yep.
Ready?
Yeah, let's move on to the next. Yeah.
I will be receiving on the Hayes.
Okay. Yeah, if you want.
Keep going. Please take notice that an application was received from the following persons for a variance of setback requirements. Araya and Catherine Hayes for La Crescent Township for a variance to reduce the setback to an existing feedlot. A hearing on this application will be held at the Houston County Commissioners Room on Thursday, July 22nd, 2021. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying said application. Comments should be mailed to the Environmental Services Department or emailed and must be received by Tuesday, July 13th of 2021. Comments in regard to the petition received by this date will be part of the public record and will be made available for review by the Board of Adjustment prior to the meeting. This was advertised on July 7th of 2021.
Yeah, I'm going to be recusing myself on this petition.
Anyone else? Hearing none. Okay, so there would be only 4 of us voting on this. Okay, let's see. Next, is the applicant here?
Yeah.
Here's some.
So we're asking for a variance based upon the fact that Katie and I, my wife, worked on this application extensively with Mr. Aaron Locker. And to our knowledge, we did everything correct and everything by the book in order to receive the building permit. Once we received the permit, we went ahead and built the house, which is now in place.
Yeah, I guess I can talk about it a little
Go
bit.
ahead.
So when this application was reviewed, we had an error in our GIS, I guess, and in the past, all the feedlots were mapped and there was nothing mapped in this location. And generally, if you look at a site and it looks like it could potentially be a feedlot, we'll look into it more, and it did not appear to meet that criteria either. So we operated, or the permit was issued under the understanding that there was no feedlot for over 1/4 mile. And then it was just brought to our attention a few weeks ago, and so the Hazens have agreed to go through the variance then for their dwelling. That is mostly us, I think, at this point.
Board members have any questions for the applicant? I guess the other is, thank you. Anyone else from the public? And we have a letter from you already, I think, so.
Right.
And this is kind of, if there's
But I
anything
didn't
extra.
have the staff report
Okay,
when I sent that in, because I didn't get it on the 13th.
Yeah.
Ken Jumper, I want to talk about this staff report, it's misleading, and we advocate for granting these variances, I'm opposed to granting these variances. I'm the person with the feedlot. I wanted to say, and as Ken recused himself, Larry, shouldn't you recuse yourself? Didn't you get a notice about this public hearing?
Excuse me, yes, we'll get to the.
Land corner within a certain range. I noted that you sent out 10.
Yeah.
So doesn't someone receive the letter sort of that has interest one way or another, perhaps? And they should recuse themselves? Decision-making body?
I guess they're making decisions based on the facts, and if they feel that they can't do so, then they're welcome to recuse themselves.
I guess if I thought I was gonna recuse myself for everybody, every time there's somebody I know, I probably wouldn't.
But on this one, you've got a letter.
But I'm not gonna gain or lose anything by this.
Okay,
I have no interest in, other than the county ordinance.
all right, I'm not trying to debate it with you, I'm bringing it up.
Okay,
So, again, I'm focusing on, I hope you all read this staff report. I found it really problematic. And I had a couple questions for Amelia. When we talked about this, I had suggested that you issue a stop work order. I'm wondering why you didn't. Is that was their back?
Because they were abiding by their permit.
Okay. Color then, a request for a variance. I mean, if the property is, if you're going ahead with the property more and more, and getting it completed, what's the point of the variance?
They were already at a point that when you brought it up that you can't dig out a foundation. So it really made a difference. If you have issues with the department and things, those can be taken to personnel. These guys are looking at the 6 criteria in the board packet tonight,
But they're
and that's
also
what
ba-
they're making decisions on.
And they're basing it on your staff recommendations. And the problem bothers me about the staff report is truly it appears to me to be advocating for granting this variance rather than supplying subjective information. My sense is it's kind of trying to distract the Board of Adjustment here from the real issue and what your role is in deciding this variance. For example, on page 5 of the staff report, describing Jumper Road as rural residential. Now, I'm not sure why that made that into the staff report. I'm not sure what the relevance is, other than to kind of create this.
Where is that on there? What name, what number?
It's number, down below, the bottom of the page, on page
Okay.
5. Staff analysis, Jumper Road is now consists primarily rural residential property. That's just blatantly false. There are 15 properties on Shumpert Road. At most, 4 of them are what most of us in this room would call purely residential property. Most of the homes on that are part of legacy farms, okay? Even among those 4 you would roughly call residential, one of them has 30 acres. They just have it all planted and free. There's every crop you can think of planted on that ridge, including apples, where you probably wouldn't find it in the spring or over California. Row crops, and most of the ridge is hay, which is a suitable crop for highly erodible land, which part of which is. So I'm not sure why this statement was thrown in there, other than to kind of create this impression that, well, what's another house? You know, it's all residential anyhow. What's another house? That is true. Here. So, you know, most of the people have significant land holdings. You know, I produce and sell over 400 tons of hay a year. You know, and other people do other similar crop production. Pretty significant work. Continuing on about my criticism of the staff report, on page 1, paragraph 3. At the time, the staff realized and corrected the location error within the state mapping database. But different staff completed each task. The connection between error, or just a second here, paragraph 3, the third paragraph, evaluating the feedlot situation due to a mapping error. I don't know how you make a mapping error on the feedlots. Whenever I registered my feedlots, I have 2 of them. They're in different quarter sections. They have different addresses. I don't know why there should have been any confusion by anybody. It was just sloppy work or what. There shouldn't have been a mapping error. Paragraph 4, the same thing. We see another mapping error. And this mapping error, the way I'm reading it, and I don't mind being corrected if I'm wrong, this mapping error occurred after the permit for this house was issued in September of 2020. So nobody got, and that was 8 months ago from when they started construction, May 1st. So nobody in 8 months figured that out, that there was an error and that there was a project. Point being that had this been noted before May 1st, you would be having a request for a variance without, a $300,000 house sitting there, which I suspect is going to influence people's opinion about what should be done here. And I want to make it real clear, I didn't know about this house being built until the last week in April when I saw a survey on it. Wasn't like I knew about it. The staff report also seems to suggest in different places that I didn't have a legal and valid feedback. Well, read through the report, you saw the copies of my registration with the MPCA. In addition to that, the fact that we're having a hearing here confirms that the zoning administrator's office of county has accepted that I have a valid registered feedlot. Otherwise, why would we be having a public hearing for a variance if I didn't have a valid feedlot? So the issue of my feedlot being legal and valid is decided and settled. Page 3 of the staff report clearly reveals that they had other options for locating this house. But the staff report seems to just kind of dismiss that. I don't know why. A long driveway is not a spectacular hardship. Where it talks on page 3 about this would have required an extensive driveway. A lot of us live in a long driveway. It's not something new. So I have a lot of problems with this staff report, and it appears to me that they're really trying to promote this variance rather than giving you objective information. On page 2, there is confusing discussion about how I would handle the variance if this variance is granted, or I would have to have a variance. If I put cattle back in my feedlot, I'm not going to expand it. I'm not going to need a variance. That's the way the ordinance reads. So, to me, again, it looks just like the staff is trying to create confusion here about what the real issues are. So, I think the variance should be denied for 3 sets of reasons. First of all, it doesn't meet the criteria that's in the zoning ordinance. I'm sure you all are familiar with that. You just approved it and had them read several times with the suggestion that was proven by the staff. I want to focus especially on number 3. On page 5, number 3, variance is due to special considerations of circumstances unique to the property not created on the property. And I want to point out also that all 6 of these criteria have to be met. They all have to be fulfilled for you to grant a variance. Number 3 is clearly cannot be met on this permit. The circumstances causing them to seek a variance, that is being too close to my legal feedlot, was created by their decision to build this house where they are building it. No one forced them to build it there. They had other places they could have built it. Request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property. It was created by the property. Nobody forced them to do that. Number 2, also on that page, they could have built it someplace else, but they didn't like the cost of a long driveway. Economic considerations alone do not constitute a practical difficulty. As I said before, lots of us live on long driveways, and this is part of living in the country and part of living in Houston County. And number 4, a driveway, a long driveway, is not an unreasonable alternative. So there's probably 3 of those 6 criteria that cannot be met by this variance request. And even if it was just 1, you're obligated to turn down the variance. The second set of reasons I have, and I think we should turn down the variance is, I don't believe the Board of Adjustment has the authority from the county zoning ordinance to grant variance after the fact or retroactive. Essentially what you're doing. Amelia just said, right, the house is already built. Now you're granting a variance for something that's already been done. I would like somebody to show me from the zoning ordinance where it says the Board of Adjustment can retroactively grant variance.
We can.
We just did.
Show me.
We just got done doing a few.
Well, show me where it says you can do that.
It's been done for a long time.
Yeah, I
I don't
know
know
it
where. I'm not sure.
I've always thought it was wrong, so show me where you can do it. You have the authority to do it. Everything that's in the zoning, everything that regulates zoning in Houston County is either in the zoning ordinance, is referenced in the zoning ordinance, most of the state statutes. Now, if you can show me in the zoning ordinance where you have the authority to give a variance after something has been completed,
We do.
well, show me.
I don't have to.
That's not for
You
you.
don't have
We don't
to.
need to have that
You're the-
discussion.
You don't have to follow the zoning ordinance.
Continue with your, anything else you
I
have.
am there, I'm pointing out why I'm opposed to the variance
Yes.
being granted, because you don't have the authority to retroactively grant a variance. You know, granting a variance after the fact is kind of, it's just like a big loophole. We encourage people to go out and do things that they can't do, hoping they can get to something after the fact. My third set of reasons that I think this variance should not be granted, and I think it's the most important one. If you step back and look at this, and this is a real problematic situation, I would be the first to say, okay? It's not something that I contributed to in any way, I'd also say that. The past zoning administrator, and maybe the current one also, have also, they've even admitted that they've screwed up. They made errors along the way. And now you have a house that is almost done, too close to a legitimate legal feedlot. It's not a good situation, okay? So now the staff wants you to grant variance. But this is just a cover-up for the mistakes they made. They're asking you to do a variance, cover up their mistakes and errors, to clear up their mistakes. This is not what the Board of Adjustment is for. The Board of Adjustment is not to create some kind of phony solution to try to correct errors associated with this permit, okay? Your role as the Board of Adjustment is very small, narrow, and specific. If a variance request meets the criteria, those 6 criteria, you approve it. If it doesn't, you turn it down. That's what it says under the part of the ordinance that describes the job of the Board of Adjustment. You don't try to solve the big problems that exist here. And it's a problem, and there's no getting around it. You have a house built, completed, errors were made by the zoning administrator, and it infringes on a legal feedlot. This is for solving this problem is for the county board and the county attorney to wrestle, not the Board of Adjustment. Now, you know, I realize you've done a lot of stuff like this in the past. I read the paper, you know, I follow things. I've been following and fighting zoning issues for 50 years. And most of the time, this stuff is wrong. So do your job and focus on the variance, not on the other parts of this problem, okay? My observation over the last 50 years is that when you have zoning controversies, it's either because the county commissioner or the planning commission or the Board of Adjustment or the zoning administrator doesn't follow the ordinance. And that's all I'm asking for. And considering this variance is that you follow the ordinance. This variance request does not meet all 6 of the required criteria and should be turned down. Whatever else happens, that's for the county board and the county attorney to sort out. And that's my statement. And I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other public person from the public wants to comment?
When was the last time you had cattle?
I guess just to reiterate the question, in case the Mike didn't catch it. Greg Myrie asked when the last time he had cattle in the feedlot was. I guess you'd have to ask Mr. Jumper. His feedlot registrations do not indicate that there was any end date on this. However, if you look at aerials, it shows somewhere between 15 and 16 that the pasture went from being heavily used to not used at all. You can come forward.
Good evening, gentlemen. Bruce Keel from Caledonia. If you have a permit, you can use the permit, correct? You can use the permit if you're permitted, or if you have a registration, you can use that registration. But if you decided not to use the registration, does that mean the registration becomes invalid? No. I mean, part of agriculture is you can plant a row of crops, correct?
Yep.
Or not. If you don't plant crops, are you not an agriculturalist? Of course you are. You have various means and modes and methods and economic considerations on how you use your land. Does Mr. Chumber have a registration that allows him to use a portion of his land for feedlot? Yes. Does he have to have a cow in there every single day of every single year? Does he? Is that a state requirement? Is that a county requirement? Is it? No, it's not. So he doesn't have a cow there. He's still registered as a feedlot operator. He's decided, I'm going to give my cows a rest. I'm going to give a piece of land a rest. I'm going to reconfigure my fencing. I'm going to reconfigure my bunking, or whatever he wants to do with that within the prescribed limitations of his parcel for that registered use. This is a bogus red herring as to whether or not there's a cow in an aerial photo.
I would like to make a motion, Ken, that we table this so that we can see in the ordinance if the Board of Adjustment has the authority legally to make a decision. We heard that we were not qualified to make this decision. It should have been the county board, which I'm not disputing. I don't want a mistake made by the board. And if you guys think I'm wrong, well, I'm wrong.
The ordinance doesn't specifically address after the fact. I guess we're not really looking at this as an formal after the fact, although look at the first three that we addressed today. They were all dealt with existing buildings. It does, however, give you guys the authority to administer provisions of the ordinance, which would include permitting, which and under the definition of zoning permit applications includes variances. So you have the authority to hear variances. It doesn't specifically say you do not either. Or have the
Whether
ability
this
to
is
hear after the fact.
building there or not, we need to deal with, we should deal with it as though there's an application for a building permit, not an existing building. And then we can deal with that, and a variance can be granted for a feedlot if we so decide. It has been in the past. I personally have experienced that. that I had a feedlot, that a building was built too close to by a permit variance. So that is our prerogative.
Okay.
I mean, we
I'm
can
just
grant the
asking.
variance to the feedlot ordinance. We've done it in the past. A lot of times.
That's what I thought.
Well, I just.
I understood where you're coming from, but I think it'd be better to just move on and get it
Okay.
taken care of.
We
if
had
we
a
can.
comment.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned with the motives, here. Can you move all this and maybe a little
Can you come up?
So as I was saying, I'm a little concerned with the motives with, Kenny having a problem with the house. We told Kenny in late April, like he had said, late April, early May, and, he had no problem with it. And since then, I've heard nothing from Mr. Walker at all. So.
Go ahead.
Just because I didn't say what the problem was to the Hayes, doesn't mean I didn't have a problem.
Okay.
You know, the reality is, it was right on the end of April 1st of May. As soon as I started processing that, I realized that that was going to be, it had to be a problem. You know, it was shortly after that when we started making, I realized I have a feedlot coming. And this house is way too close to my feedlot. And what are the implications of that going to be? You know, keeping track of the feedlots is not my job in Houston County. It's the zoning administrator's job. Okay, it's the feedlot officer's job. And the fact that they didn't pick it up, I just couldn't quite process that until finally I called up Amelia and we talked about it. And that's when she required, I didn't initiate this request for variance, okay? It was not my request, not my doing. And to respond to Greg's comments here, the issue of whether or not I have a legal legitimate feedlot has been settled. And it's been settled by the problem, or the reality of this hearing. You know, if the county thinks I don't have a legitimate legal feedlot, and why are we having this hearing tonight to get a variance from my feedlot?
Okay, I think we've all gone over this
Well,
already,
okay,
so
just wanted to
we
make that
understand
point.
where you're coming from.
And, you know,
I think we're gonna
so-
close the
I'd
public hearing.
I'd like to make some comments.
Is you going for the public hearing or should we go to our board meetings? We as a board, have the right to, okay, just, I would like to move off the public hearing and into the board discussion.
Well, I think Franklin's comments about getting an opinion about whether or not you can retroactively do these things is a good one. You ought to get that feed up once and straightened out, because I think you do it wrong about 10 times every month.
I think that's part of the Board of Adjustments functions. We have a lot of times, half the time comes in, somebody's erroneously puts up a building closer to the property line than they should. They didn't have zoning requirements there. And that's part of our job, is to figure these things out, is who's not so much, I mean, it seems like everybody's, who are we going to blame for this? Who are we going to blame for this? Let's figure out what we're going to do to correct it. What do you think? Are we looking at saying, what is it, a couple $100,000? We should just tear that down and move it. Is that what you're advocating? That was you don't have to answer that. But I think we admitted that there's an error. Apparently, somebody thinks that it's was done intentionally, that they're all against me or something. An error was made. Now we have to figure out what we're going to do to correct it. We've got to balance the needs of the benefit of the county with the benefit of the person that's been damaged, or whatever the word is, If that's what this group is we put together to do, would they come all the time here? You know, this was built too close to there, and that's what we do is figure out how do we balance their needs with your needs? What do we do with that?
That's not your job.
I didn't ask you.
Well, I'm telling you, that's not your job.
You're out of order.
Close the public
We closed the public hearing.
Somebody has to, and maybe if we decide this, I wouldn't be object to holding it over. But on the other hand, I think if we are wrong, that's not our position, then the attorneys and the board of supervisors will tell us that. But that's my understanding. What we do is we look at every time we have a meeting, it's something somebody did wrong, something that I didn't know that was there. And that's a lot of what we do. Whether we're doing it right or not, I'm not sure of that. But every time, but most of the time we meet, we have some retroactive variance that we're doing. How many we did tonight? And you think you're smarter than the rest of us, and we're doing it all wrong. That's your opinion. But I think that's what we do. We balance we have to use our judgment and say, this is fair for them, this is fair for you. And that's what I'm saying.
I think no matter what we were doing, no matter where they wanted to locate, a variance was going to be required. Number one is, do we have an ordinance that a quarter can only have one house? The section to the further north already has a house. So this location is, by that part, is the only one that place we could go close to the road. Further driveways could be further away. That had been one of the criteria prior to that, but that's about it. And no matter how we did it, a variance was going to be required. That's the way I see it. Any other comments?
So in defense of Ken Jumper, and I'm not trying to butter up Ken Jumper, I'm just asking a question. So if he comes in 5 years from now and wants to renew his feedlot permit, then could we put conditions in, if the board grants a variance, could we put a provision in that he, within whatever, 5 years from when his application or his registered permit runs out, that he could be granted another feedlot?
I don't know if we can.
I'm
It didn't work for me.
asking.
It didn't work for me when I
Okay.
had it happen to me.
Okay, I'm asking the question. That's
All
all.
that was referred to is, well, you should be able to get a variance if you want to expand that feedlot because you had a challenge to the,
I agree with you
but
that another avenue would be that we put a condition on this, that the Hazes will not object to any feedlot, so that he would not be harmed going forward. He would, if he has a feedlot, he can continue. If he wants to renew it, he can continue, and they will not resist any feedlot. And that would, that should solve any issue that he has with his feedlot.
And
I
we
don't know if that's,
I don't
we'll
know if
have
we
to
can
talk
do
to
it.
Sam to see if we
can
can do that.
do that.
I think that's essentially what a feedlot variance is, though, is kind of saying that we realize that there's a feedlot there and that there are these nuisances that you may not experience in other areas. And so you're kind of giving up, to an extent, your right to complain about anything at that point. So I don't know that we need that explicitly written. I don't know that we've done that in the past for anything.
it would be nice if you could, feedlot would be exempt from any variance requirement because of that house.
Well,
And I don't know if how we can put that in.
and I guess the other factor to point out is regardless of this house, had he wanted to do any sort of expansion, he still was gonna be required to do a variance because there's already an existing house within a quarter mile.
Yeah.
So this one isn't really changing a whole lot for his situation, I guess.
I don't expand, I don't need to.
Right. Are we ready to go through the findings? At this stage, members? And I think if we do that, we should do a vote on each one.
I think we need to look at them from the view of the Hayeses when they were getting their permit,
Right, I agree with that.
with the knowledge they had when they got their permit.
Go ahead. So number one, the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of official controls. Analysis says that this meets the density control system put in place by the comprehensive land use plan and the zoning ordinance. Ken Anderson,
I agree.
Larry,
I agree.
Franklin,
Yes.
Wayne.
I agree.
2, there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls, and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Analysis says that the zoning office issued a permit for this dwelling last fall, and it was constructed in compliance with that permit. It was not until substantial construction took place that the error was brought to the county's attention. Larry,
I agree.
Franklin,
Yes.
Wayne,
I agree.
and Ken.
I agree. There's no other. It fits the zoning requirements of a quarter section.
Three, the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. Analysis says that the applicants worked extensively with zoning staff prior to making an application for a zoning permit, which was later granted, unknowingly allowing them to build within the feedlot setback area. Franklin,
Yes.
Wayne,
Yes,
Ken,
Yes, because the quarter section requirement. There was no other premise in that quarter.
number 4, the
Oop,
variance.
Larry,
Oops, sorry, Larry.
Yes.
4, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty is sought. Staff analysis says that by the time the county became aware of the situation, construction was at the stage in which the only practical option is a variance. Wayne,
yes, I agree.
Ken Anderson,
Yes, I agree.
Larry,
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Number 5, that the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. Analysis says that Jumper Ridge now consists of primarily rural residential properties. Commercial agriculture in the general vicinity of this proposal consists of apple orchards and row crops. This proposal will not affect the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity and is consistent with other properties in the area. Ken Anderson,
I agree. It will not affect the public health and safety in the facility.
Larry,
Yeah, I agree.
Franklin,
Yes, there is a commercial apple orchard there I saw.
Yep.
And it's noted in here.
Wayne.
Yes, I agree.
6, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district. Permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation or permit standards lower than those required by state law. Analysis says that this is an area request and will not permit lesser standards than those required by state law. There is no floodplain in the proximity of this request. Larry,
I agree.
Franklin,
Yes.
Wayne,
Yes,
and Ken Anderson.
Yes. Well, through the findings, we need a motion to approve all the findings.
So moved.
Motion by Franklin,
second.
second by Wayne. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. Are there any conditions that can be placed on a conditional WC?
I guess,
I don't, offhand, I'm not sure we can do anything on the feedlot stuff. Recognizing there is a feedlot there is what we need to do. But that's
Yeah.
by granting the variance, we're doing that.
correct.
And I don't know of any other, realistically, any other way to deal with it.
Well, I don't know. I'm asking, that's all.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
don't know. I'm honest.
I
I
mean-
want to be honest.
No,
Well, I would like to put something in there.
to protect the feedlot.
Yes.
I would too, but I'm not sure how to do it. That's my
Oh,
bigger
yeah.
concern.
I agree. I don't know that either. Contingent on what?
If Ken wanted to expand.
If
what
Ken
would he
wanted
have to
to expand or would otherwise need a variance, we would remove that requirement for this feedlot.
But
We already
Yeah.
gave him the variance.
But if he's expanding anyway, he's going to need a variance because of other reasons.
yeah, there's an additional house within the same quarter, or within that quarter mile, and, you know, yeah, right now it's under the same ownership, but it may not be at some point, I guess, and so those, I mean, those people would have,
Is that house a separate parcel?
I believe so.
It's on
I
the
believe they
parcel
needed to
that's-
be on separate
They're in
parcels.
different
in order to be
quarter
permitted.
sections.
It's on the parcel that's got the feedlot, doesn't it?
There is a house there, but that's under,
This is
Ken owns that, and so that would be
Kenny's
exempt.
Yeah.
As of
Whose
right
house
now.
is it?
It would be, Orion Catherine Hayes' house.
Oh, they're
Yeah,
right
they
on
have a
here.
house up
Okay.
here.
Yeah,
Right
and that,
And that's why they're building
That's
here, because you can't have.
from the 1950s, every
Yeah.
Quarter.
Okay. So they're not really taking anything from it much.
He'd still need a variance
So he would need a variance from that one.
regardless. But if he doesn't expand,
If he doesn't expand, his feedlot is still
It's fine.
operational the way it is. And
Right.
that's been for me the same way.
Unless,
I've never had a problem with my
so the
building, the
point-
house
the
built.
point is
too
this
close to
new
my
dwelling
feedlot.
doesn't affect the future expansion.
I guess, yeah, short answer, no, because there is already one
That's what I mean.
within the same quarter mile.
Right.
So there's two people that would
Technically,
be
he has to
affected.
have a variance no matter what he does.
You mean if he
If he
expands?
wants to expand. where he
Yeah,
needs
but if he
to,
kept it the same,
Kept
then
it the
he,
same, he
Well, but
doesn't
what is
need
it, what
anything.
is it?
He
What is
doesn't
it
need a permit.
set for now?
Other than registration.
How
that
many,
he
can
does.
he- how many can he have now?
Right now, his permit is for, I
40.
think, 40 animals.
That's what he said he had them.
And I think when
This is
I
what
was
he-
looking at them,
That's what he currently had.
Well,
Or the
that's what
last-
he listed.
We
That's what he
look
had
That's what he
last.
listed as his registration.
yeah, we look at when we deal with situations like that, we look at the maximum number they've ever claimed on a registration, and then that would be their maximum number before we consider it expansion. I recall his being very consistent since we started doing feedlot registrations.
The reality is, they can go to 50 animal units, anybody can, right?
Yeah.
Without registering.
Without
Without
even
yeah.
getting the
without the
feedlot.
registration, yeah. So he's in the range of that.
so now on the building permit, doesn't it say in there that in the permit that you build an agricultural district, that you can't complain about dust and lights and smell and so on, or doesn't that pertain to all building permits in an agricultural setting?
We don't actually put that language on the building permits. I believe that's in the ordinance though, in the egg district, but I guess that's kind of the point of the variance too, is so that they're realizing that that is, that there are factors that go along with being close to a feedlot.
Well, what I'm getting at here is in retrospect to the Hayes is there that if he decides to put in 40 or 50 head of livestock, he couldn't complain because of his smell from his feedlot. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. I guess if he maintains, maintains continuous use at this level, there are always other circumstances if if he's in violation of a state statute or something, or a county
Right, there are
ordinance on some kind of feedlot item, there would be a possibility we could enforce something. But other than that, they kind of give up the ability to make a complaint, I guess.
But if he put in 20 hogs tomorrow, they didn't like the smell too bad.
Smells like money.
Yeah, really.
Well, I don't know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I'm trying to protect both sides.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm trying to agree that too, but that's,
So the question is, can we put something in there? I think we all agree, everything else. Can we put something in there to protect his,
It would appear not necessary to me.
okay, let's go without it.
I think it's,
We hashed it over and out.
we're already giving a variance on the feedlot, so we're not recognizing there is a feedlot there. I think that's the biggest part of the factor. We are officially recognizing that as a feedlot
Yeah,
within that distance
Yeah.
by granting this variance. And reality is he would have to have a variance to do any expansion, no matter what he did. So that's not
yeah,
Like,
so he isn't losing anything.
right.
All right.
So where we are is need a motion to grant the variance. I need someone to make that motion. Or a motion to deny it, I guess.
I'll make a motion that we grant the variance. Oh, we got,
Of
we got the,
1,108 feet to exist.
yeah, okay.
Grant the
the-
variance to an existing or dwelling. with
Variance of 1,108 feet to an existing dwelling within 1,320 feet of a registered feedlot.
That would be the way we're doing it. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say
We'll try to
aye.
do a roll call.
Do a roll call.
Ken
Okay.
Anderson,
Aye.
Larry Hassner,
It'll get tougher. Aye.
Franklin Hahn,
Aye.
and Wayne Runnigan.
Aye.
We're running a little late now.
Yep,
I knew that was going to happen.
yep.
Okay,
Next.
next one
Welcome
is
back to your
Eric
fold.
and Tiffany Beck.
Please take notice that an application was received from the following persons for variances of setback requirements. Eric and Tiffany Beck in the Crescent Township for a variance to allow new dwellings on lots that are not buildable, lots as defined by the ordinance, excuse me. A variance to reduce the setback required from a public road. A variance to allow a structure within a bluff impact zone. A variance to reduce setback from the top of the bluff. A variance to minimum sewage treatment and disposal area standards. And a variance to not allow an accessory building near the front lot line in the principal building. A hearing on this application will be held at the Houston County Commissioners Room at 7 on Thursday, July 22nd of 2020 or 2021. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying of said application. Comments should be mailed to the Environmental Services Department or emailed and must be received by Tuesday, July 13th of 2021. Comments in regards to the petition received by the state will be part of the public record and will be made available for review by the Board of Adjustment prior to the meeting. This was advertised on July 7th of 2020.
I guess next, do you have any comments?
The reason I'm asking for all the variances is so I have an option, so I can get this house built. If you guys approve that crew draw into mine, if we go that route, I will not need the setback from the road, and I will not need the sewer setback. If we move it, of course, that changes everything. The reason we're looking to put this house where it's at is hopefully some of you, I know some of you have been up there, hopefully you guys have an idea. It slopes off, so we were gonna take that house, take it back to where it would slope off. That would allow us to have somewhat of a yard for the kids to play, would be able to build a driveway, so if we have any friends over, whatever, they're off the road.
What?
There's no overnight parking.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, okay.
So that's one of the contingencies of the purpose of having a larger driveway, but if we have additional vehicles other than our own, there's no parking.
So my house would line up still behind most houses that are up there already. Most of the houses are,
There's only three copies.
Okay. All right, got it.
Sure.
we all good? Okay. So most of the houses, if you kind of look at mine, I would still be set back from most of them up there. I know it curves, but if you kind of imagine that curve, I still would be back. We do have a pretty good plan for erosion. We're gonna do a berm in the bottom. And the reason we're gonna do the berm is because if anything ever goes bad with it, it's a lot easier to fix that after the house is built. Smaller equipment is needed compared to my original idea about doing the big block. The big block weighs so much, you need lots of big equipment to do any repairs, if any repairs are ever needed. So that's why that has changed to the berm idea, because then you just take a skid steer, you would be able to, fix any potential breakdowns of it. I don't know, I'm pretty new at this, so I would do a lot better at questions if you guys got any.
Well, I think we could note too that, so you submitted two drawings with your packet. The planned one and then a hand-drawn one. And I guess based on my visits on site, you said that the hand-drawn one is actually more accurate.
The hand-drawn one is more accurate now, yeah. After talking to different gentlemen, they've just tweaked that from our original idea, just try to make it, I guess, more suitable with theirs, blend in a little bit more compatible, and like I said, with the retaining wall that's in the original one, if anything ever would go bad with it, it would be
Hard.
yeah, there you go.
The width of the lot, the house is gonna take up most of the width. It's a narrow, deep lot. It's about
Right,
3.3
right.
acres in general. So to get a large piece of equipment back there, you would have to be going onto neighbor's property, which is all wooded, and it would be a real nuisance if anything would need to be fixed.
There's no access from the bottom, huh?
No, because that's Apple Blossom Drive.
Yeah.
And that's almost straight up. It's quite the.
Right. Yeah, I've been out there enough to see that once you get further, it gets getting.
Oh, yeah, she goes, right.
And then it's,
We have a little, capability to build it up if it does turn to a road down. We have a little more. So the reason why the plan is very too is that this one of them was the architect's vision. The hand-drawn one was with our contractor coming up there and actually seeing the land and seeing where everything is going to get put. With how we have things now, it's just going to allow us some of that little leeway, that additional driveway space for that off the street parking, which is a requirement of that area. Before we purchased the land, we were not made aware of some of the specifics that are required for that area. Another example would be that there is a minimum of a 3-car garage. You have to have a 3-car garage in that area with 3 functioning doors. There are some weird things that are up in that ridge. So now
Are they, whose rule is that?
that
Is that the
is,
association?
Yes.
yeah, okay.
yes. So
Wow.
being a part of that, that was not made clear to us when we purchased the lot. So now as a reactionary, because of that, we want to make sure before we start the day that we don't have to come back with anything. So that's why we're asking for that proposal.
You talk about a berm I think of terrace as the same.
So what our contractor described it as is basically digging a trench, and we're gonna be burying the existing stumps that we have up there and then making a mound, so kind of building it up before the slope. So making our own little bunny hill per se. So then that's
Is there
gonna,
one or is there
Terrace.
multiple?
it'd just be one.
It just would be one going across. Wouldn't go the whole way across. So if you look at my crew drawing sheet, if you go like where I have the 20-foot line and you go to the right of it, that's where the berm would be. If you go to the left, it's pretty level there. So the big part would be from that 20-foot line I have going to the right. That's where it drops off.
So not only does it pitch down, slope down, it also has a greater slope going from to the left versus the right. So the whole area kind of pitches to the northwest corner.
So you're still proposing to put the corner of the house where you told me them stumps were?
Correct. That's,
Well, the berm they're talking about, if you haven't been there and looked at it, the berm they're talking about is right, dropping right off the edge of this table. It's straight down. And the berm that they're talking about beyond the house,
Beyond the berm, yes. Yep.
and it is steep.
Very
I just wanted to clarify that.
And unfortunately, I know that we're very dirt up there right now. There's some questions from the board members who came up there why we haven't seeded. We have not had any problems with erosion or runoff and everything. We have rust piles and stuff up there. We are processing our own lumber up there as well. We are hoping to get our berm in our basement done this fall, so we kind of can avoid some of that stuff for the spring. That we have a plan for when the spring melt comes and we don't have a problem with that runoff. We didn't have a problem this year, but our brush piles were more sporadic. We have them now condensed, so that will definitely help by getting this in a timely manner that we can kind of put that into the spring thaw.
So your berm is gonna be wood?
it will be wood, rock. There's more material in it to compact it. The gentleman was explaining, I don't know if you know Con Sherwin, anybody, he thought I would know him. He's a good friend of mine. He's been doing this stuff for quite a long time. So he was just saying how he's done it in the past. You would bury the stumps, and then it would be a sand for drainage, and then some rock, and then with the dirt. So you'd have good drainage going through, so you're not making this berm where the water would hit and then not have nowhere to go.
You understand, of course, that whatever that happens with that water, you're responsible for.
Yes.
Correct. And that's kind of, he had, yes, and he had a good plan, and I'm not going to pretend I understand it all. That's why you hire contractors. But he knew the situation, and he knows you don't want it to rush down. He had a good plan how to slow it down, to make it drain, and to keep control of it all.
Sure. Okay.
I don't know.
It's cheaper to do it right the first time than to fix it.
Correct.
So
Do we need to look at each one of these? I mean, I don't think we can really.
I'm just a comment. I have the issue for me is these people, both of these applicants bought lots with the understanding that they were buildable. The county approved them, the developer developed them, and they were presented as buildable lots. And now, of course, things have changed. I have a hard time personally saying to people, well, now things are changed. You've spent your money too bad. And so I look at these situations, and there are, as you well know, you've been up there, there are all kinds of homes up there that were built prior to the restrictions that are now proposed that are doing well. I mean, I didn't see any evidence of any terrible erosion. The development looks uniform and good. I have confidence from my perspective that the zoning office will restrict the building and proposals that these people present in such a way that they're far more restrictive than they were when the original houses were built. We'll restrict them in such a way that will will safeguard the erosion and the health and the safety and the septic and all that sort of thing. I'm comfortable with that. I think we hire zoning officials to do the right thing for us, and it's Peter Jim Jumper. I just have confidence that we need to move forward with these folks.
It's too bad that the Crescent Township, following the zoning ordinance of Houston County, didn't keep their zoning, so then they could approve all of these houses there instead of dumping the problems on us. Apparently, the La Crescent Town Board or zoning in La Crescent was running into problems, so they wanted to dump it onto us. My question is for Amelia. If I owned that lot and I came to you, right here it says on a non-buildable lot, that's what you're saying. So if we give a variance, we're giving a variance on a lot that is not buildable. So if I come to you and I own this lot, can you go out there and go on record to say, yes, I can stake this house out here and here and here, and it meets all the county ordinances? Can you do that?
No.
These were buildable lots though, when they were
Okay,
developed.
if they were buildable lots, then why didn't Houston County, why didn't they have something in writing from Houston County that they were all buildable lots and have it notarized and all of that stuff?
were
We wouldn't
approved.
be having this discussion.
Well, they were approved as buildable lots when it was developed.
Okay, so then they should have a notarized agreement from the county that they're buildable lots.
The development wouldn't have been approved had the county not determined that they were buildable at the time. They're not buildable not by our ordinances now, but at the time that they were approved, La Crescent determined that they were buildable. Now we have that issue, you're right, but it just seems that they were sold as buildable lots, people bought them as buildable lots. Now to turn around and say, well, sorry, they're not buildable anymore, doesn't seem justified or just, if you will, for us to take that position.
Well, we didn't need a building permit either 20, 30 years ago, but now we do. So now we have to abide by the county zoning ordinance that we need a building permit.
But we grandfathered a lot of properties that didn't have building permits. We grandfathered a lot of things in from previous.
So my question to you is, you couldn't go in that lot and stake it out in following the ordinance.
I mean, as I suspect what Aaron told you when you first came in was that, looking at these lots, they aren't buildable, or they're not compliant, and you just can't place a house on them. Not 100%.
Yep.
But just like all these other variances we get too, people are entitled to ask for a reduction of zoning standard or zoning requirements. It just like these people just have to ask for a lot more of them than what we typically see. But yeah, they were told that
We wanted to put them all on one time. We don't want to waste your time and have
Right.
to come back. We're really only going to need the top of bluff is our biggest concern. If we have to go, our house is able to be put on our lot with a 1.5 foot wiggle room, according to how it's buildable, is how we kind of, in our crude understanding of when Aaron came out and explained the off the street center, the from bluff side, from the property lines, we have about an 18-inch wiggle room, which we are hoping. Then we found out after that we can't have overnight parking on the street and all these other things. Our garage has to have 3 garage doors. Well, that significantly increased the size of our garage. That significantly increases the size of our driveway because these are all these other ordinances to try to keep the other side down. So what we're doing basically is just trying to be efficient with our time and asking for all the variances at once.
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah.
can't go in.
I'm-
one
My
or two
bigger
years.
concern, minimum sewage treatment and disposal, but that also has to have a distance from your well is required,
And we
and
will be
100
good.
feet or something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the
Really
water
well.
source is. Where is the
So it's
community
across,
well?
it's across the street.
Okay,
So
so there was a
we're-
building, the small building there, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
There's 3
okay,
of them
I
up
was
there.
wondering if that was a well there,
Yeah.
but I didn't know for sure.
Yep.
I mean, whatever I had for map, it didn't show that as a well.
No, and I was thinking about doing a well, and I had a gentleman come up there and In about 10 minutes, he told me I was crazy. He said that well across the street is more than fine. He goes, I would hate to take visits away from me, but he goes, you're set there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's located basically on the,
Straight across the street to the left.
from the upper part, the south or north corner. It was on the corner, I
The
think.
upper part.
Yeah.
The north corner.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
just
we're
like,
from
I was
Winona.
there Monday, drove it and walked a lot of that.
We're from Winona, so when you talk north and south, we get all confused because you have the river to go by.
Oh,
So, sorry. I did forget to say one other thing. I know it was brought up prior about the house sliding down. There is an idea of doing the basement deeper, again, in that one corner where it does dip, going 4 feet deeper down, filling it with sand, and then you would level it off just to give it that
Okay.
extra
I think
strength
you're
in
gonna-
that one corner.
I think you're gonna hit a lot of rock.
I don't know.
well, that's the other.
I don't know. They've been taking stumps and we haven't found what our neighbors have been
True,
telling us.
true,
we were
because
gonna
I couldn't
find.
see any rocks when, hardly any. I mean, just
Not
small
like
ones.
what the neighbors have been saying, but you're right, maybe. But the gentleman that's gonna dig it, he has the equipment, he's not too concerned.
All right, that's good.
So I cross my fingers, I go with the professionals, what they say, right?
All right. With these variances, it will be compliant, is that right?
If we grant all of them, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's something you guys could consider too, is if you want to handle each one independently, or if you want to just do them all at once.
I don't know that we can go each one independently.
Well,
I don't want to. Prepared to do.
part of it is I have no problem at all with the road setback, but I may have problems with some of the others. You know, the sewage treatment, I'm just, now, we require 2 drain fields, that's part of the zoning, and I think one of those, it looked like you had 3 different locations at one point.
At one point. So right now, it would be the drain field as you see it in front of the house. That would be their second one. If you take it off of where the garage is, and if you would go to that like 142 mark, then it's pretty flat out there. That would be our primary one.
So on the crew drawing, the area. with
Okay.
the quarter seat. So if you're on the crew drawing, you go back to one of the garage area, you go right back this way. And that
Okay.
142, that's gonna be our
Oh,
primary. That's the
okay,
most
down
level
there.
area on the lot. Where the regulation.
The sewer,
Okay, yep.
And I
see it.
don't think that was, anybody was really able to see that because I had already started cutting down trees. I pretty much, after Aaron came up and said, here's what you can do, I went up the next day and started cutting just to get a jump. And then, of course, that mess was there. And that's why this plan is
You
kind
can
of
only
changed.
cut so many trees.
Yep, and I will tell you, I took 3 extra ones only because they were dead. But when Aaron came up there, he showed me where to cut 2. And I did take 3 extras only because they were dead. And that was his thing that he said, if they're dead, take them now, but otherwise, to this point, don't go further.
the sewer isn't the problem with me. The problem with me is with the corner of the house. The corner of the house is gonna go, and if any of you folks that live down there went and looked at it, where them stumps are, where they're talking, you know what I'm talking about. They're right, that stump's here, and it's right straight up and down. They said it was. That's the problem I have where the house is gonna be, because it's too
Just
steep.
I
Also,
tend to,
so where you come into the lot, if it's in front of the property, correct? So if you come in from the street side, there's that small little mound that comes up. The plan is to level that all back, so all that earth is gonna get pushed back. So that's gonna be all settled back as well as digging out the basement. So that is gonna get built up.
Well, it's gonna be steeper then.
Yeah, because it's got to be
Steeper
up
behind-
above.
beyond
the
Steeper
road.
behind it.
Be behind it.
behind the ground that he's putting up.
Right. Not so much what we're gonna use, but behind the berm, I'm calling is dead space. No one's really gonna get back there.
Once you get beyond that, that's going to go revert back to nature.
Right.
It's not, yeah, it's
I
nature
mean,
now.
that's,
We're not gonna
that's
touch
the
it.
intent. The trees will
Right.
grow up, whatever is there,
It's staying.
and you won't be, other than maybe a dead tree takedown.
Hopefully not, because it's really
Well,
bad.
eventually they do die.
Correct. But hopefully it falls the right way and it can just
Right,
stay there.
yes. It'll go
Yeah.
downhill.
Right. Well, not all the way down, though.
And that's another problem.
Well, if the house could have been moved up towards the street more,
That's, I guess I'm
that's,
kind of leaning that way.
that's the way I'm-
Then we wouldn't
That's
have
where I'm
quite
at,
so
too.
far.
Problem there, though, is why is there garage in the driveway?
Yeah, I see, it, especially when they mandate that big.
Well,
garage.
and I was just looking, I don't see a variance in the driveway. Let's keep it-
For the road, they're gonna meet the road setback.
But the slope of the driveway.
Slope of the driveway won't be a problem.
Oh, yeah, that should.
Because your plan was to the lower part,
Correct,
where the
Oh,
hill, the
okay.
lowest part of that
Okay,
cross.
alright.
I remember that.
correct,
So you're not that, and then you work upward to your garage.
correct. Yes.
I guess the documents I handed you, you guys can look at these. So I went through, Aaron was out there on May 21st of last year. And this was from, the smaller one was from his notes where he called the total bluff at 1,146 feet in elevation and the slopes that he shot. And so, which you had, I guess, had said you'd been out there. So then I kind of drew the site plan based upon that, and then on this handprint drawing, because I realized we didn't have one of those. And I think the only probably difference, you guys can look at this, is that the stuff would be shifted a little bit with the contours more. But those are to scale then. So those are the pictures I just gave you that weren't in the pack. And I guess just to touch on the septic system variance, I know they say they have two locations, and so the ordinance requires that you have two type 1 locations. Because we don't have, I know they had soils work done and then that contractors moved out of state and there's just no records, but because we don't know for sure, I don't really recommend dropping that variance. So that you guys don't end up having to come back in if for some reason you can't
Right.
locate a type 1. But so the type 1 is what you'd see out. It's a regular mound or at-grade or trench or whatever. It's just kind of your standard system. What we might end up seeing on a lot of these lots, I'm not saying this one in particular, but is what would be more of a condensed drain field. And then they have more of like a pre-treatment option ahead of it getting that far. So, which is not any less of a system. It's just different than what our ordinance calls for.
I think all the good lots are used up.
I'll agree with that.
oh, I roared the road out going over there. I've been there 3 times. So I've been,
I know the road,
I wore down. Every time I go, it doesn't, the toe of the bluff doesn't change. It stays.
yeah, yeah.
I'd be a little worried if you said it did.
Well, it hasn't washed away.
So what are our concerns?
I don't know.
Well, the bluff, the 20 feet, I guess I'd be more willing to see it if it were further up, away from that steeper part. But technically I think it says 40 feet from the toe of the point of the bluff, so that would be the change from the 25 to 18% roughly. Am I right on that, or is it the peak of the bluff? I'm trying to remember how that road ordinance is.
The toe of the bluff is where you see a visible change.
The top of the bluff is what
in
we're
the top of
dealing
the
with.
bluff, sorry, yeah. And so, looks like Aaron told you that day that it was 1,146, or at that.
define these variances? Aaron?
I took a lot of this from Aaron, or everything pretty much from
Right,
Aaron's.
yeah.
And
And so-
packet.
But I
But
don't,
the variances are in the book.
but I don't think we can sit and second guess it. You know, he knows more about it than we do. This is what he drew up. Why would we sit there and say, well, it's 25 feet, I think we should, 29 feet, I think we should make it 25. That doesn't make any sense.
The variance for the toe of the bluff is 25, the top of the bluff is 40. That's in the books. That's in the code. There's a difference distance.
Yeah,
What he's asking for is a variance of 20 feet from the top of the bluff. Instead of 40 feet, you have 20 feet, what I do. And I'm just trying to.
so we're gonna change that?
That's no change. That's just asking for that
That's what
variance.
the variance we're asking for. So
Yeah.
instead of being 40 feet.
Yeah, I understand that.
We're asking for 20 feet instead of 40.
Why are we looking it up?
No, I think you're asking for the full, like a full reduction, like you're building right at the top of the bluff.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna look that up and second guess what he doing. I mean, we're gonna say, I don't like what Aaron put in there, I wanna change it.
Well,
We're doing?
I was just trying to look up where the point of the bluff is defined. That's what I was trying to
I
find.
think it's in your packet too.
It probably is. I know I had the manual.
It's
along.
under. It's not under like.
Top of the bluff, the point of a bluff where there is a visible, observed, or clearly identified break in the slope from a steeper to gentler slope above. If no break in the slope is apparent, the top of the bluff shall be determined to be the upper end of a 50-foot segment measured on the ground with an average slope exceeding 18%. So it appears that 1460 is basically the break, because you're going from an 18% slope to a 25. Roughly what I see on the handout you sent.
Yeah, and I think it's 1146.
1146, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that would be, then you'd have to measure 40 feet from that point to be in compliance.
Correct.
And the 20 foot is from that point also. And I'm not sure, that's where I'm not sure that your proposal is. No, you're pretty close. It might be just a little, but you're right at that, at the break point is where your corner, that stump is.
Yeah, you're pretty much right on the.
You're right on the bluff edge, the measured point. So we would, to really be,
Yeah.
to make it, you don't, the way you're proposing, you'd have to eliminate the bluff top. Totally. Is from what I see.
Yeah, a full, yeah.
The
You're
full
asking for
40
the
foot,
40
not 20.
variance.
And I'm not,
I,
that's where I think a lot of us are struggling with that much.
I suggested when I was over there that, and I see their point of view, to move the house up, put the garage down below along the side or whatever, but that maybe won't work with their plan. I don't know that. Well, I said my piece.
okay, so I think I was confused as to where your 20 feet was coming from. So there's a variance to reduce the setback from the top of the bluff. That's totally, so that's a 40-foot setback, so they can build right up to the top of the bluff. And then the variance of 20
Okay, yep, I
feet
see
to
that
allow,
now.
a bluff impact zone is the area within
Yeah.
20 feet of the top of the bluff, so that's. where
That's
he has
right.
a full reduction to.
Yep.
So, if that helps.
And I understand what you guys are saying, but I mean, if you just look at the houses that are up there already, I mean, I'm not doing anything different than what's up there. And I'm sure some of them houses have been up there for a while because some of them look, you can kind of tell new and a little dated. And none of them have moved or, you know,
And one of the big things we want to do too is not to cut out. We don't want a house on top of the bluff looking out over, everything. That's why we kept the wooded area. I know that we have limits anyway, but that was not our purpose, was to have a hole in the bluff with the house so we can look out and we can look in our back windows. That still keeping in mind that conservation of the area. Because quite a few of the other houses in that area did do a cutout, and that's where the last time we met by Zoom, there was quite a few people complaining to the city about some issue with the runoff, which is why we have quite the expensive plan because of the farm. Given the topography of that lot, we don't have a lot to work with.
That's right, it's unbuildable.
Well, if there's anyone else in the audience has a comment on this that they would want to make, otherwise. We want to just move on to the findings and then look how we go at the variance after that. We have to do the findings first before we can look at it.
Do you want to handle all of them as a single unit, I guess?
There's one
I guess
objection.
that's an
Sales.
issue, a decision that I'll leave that, kind of, we can maybe decide when we get to that variance, we'll make a motion to do them all or not, what individual. If someone wants to do them individually, I would rather that we will adhere to that, who in one individual wants that. Otherwise, we can do them all as one.
Well, I
Some
think,
of them are contingent on each other.
I
Yeah.
realize that.
and I think we need, if we do them all separate, we have to do all separate findings. So that's,
Oh,
that's why we kind of need
yeah,
to decide.
I would say the findings would have to be done could be done for all of them. Well, what do you guys want?
All of them together.
Anyone want to do them individually?
You're talking about the staff analysis.
Staff analysis and the variances,
Well, if we're
Findings for
gonna
the
do each,
variances.
findings for the variances, do them all as they're, they apply to everything.
we might be here till 2 in the morning if we do them individually.
Why don't we move on to the variance, do it as a group? And I think we can do it where you read your staff analysis and we just accept it at that point with the say, if we agree with that analysis.
Okay,
To a non-formal vote.
okay. All right, so number 1, the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of official controls. Analysis says that the comprehensive plan sets forth a strategy of balancing private incentives with protection of the public good, allowing development on these existing lots with reduced standards coupled with specific attention to challenges posed by the ground slope strikes such a balance.
Well said.
Okay, no comments on that? Go ahead, next one.
2, that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Analysis is the practical difficulty stems from the limited area suitable for building site development. The applicants are asking to develop their lot as much as neighbors have done in similar situations.
Any comments, questions?
Well, this one's gonna be steeper than the neighbor to the west, because the neighbor to the west is right on the flat. House. to the west.
Oh, yeah,
There's others involved.
some of them.
It's a lot of issues.
Believe me.
Okay, let's go on.
The number 3, the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. Analysis says that this parcel is unique and special in that it's part of an approved residential subdivision and is comprised predominantly of slopes in excess of 25%. It is estimated that only 20% of this lot contains buildable slopes. Areas with similar steepness are present in the county but are not commonly found to comprise this percentage of area within a platted residential subdivision. The current owners did not control the platting process and likely acquired their properties with the understanding that the lots were buildable. The fact that they believed the lots to be buildable, a reasonable belief to be held, when in fact the lots do not satisfy the criteria for building set forth in the ordinance, created circumstances unique to these properties.
comment to that one is, a lot of these lots are similar, they won't, that aren't built on, well, they won't be built on unless we change our ordinances in the county. I mean, I'm just being
Yeah.
honest.
Well, I don't think we can change our ordinances. We'll have to take them one at a time and do
Right.
it. That's what a variance is for.
Four, the variance cannot be alleviated by reasonable method other than a variance and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulties sought. Analysis says that variances are needed to facilitate buildings on these lots, and there's no reasonable alternative means of locating structures.
Anyone have a question? Go ahead.
Five, the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. Analysis says that the variances will allow the placement of structures in a manner similar to existing development in the area. Specific precautions related to slopes, erosion, and wastewater treatment are needed to ensure public health, safety, and welfare.
And those are part of your permitting process, right? They don't have to, we don't have to have variances for those.
Some of those we don't.
For the,
I'm just thinking
Erosion,
septic,
erosion
Oh, so
has
the
to be in
erosion
place.
control and all that sort of thing comes with the permitting process.
yep, they'll be approved with
Okay.
the dwelling
Okay.
permit at the same time. Moving on.
Go on, yeah.
Six, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district. Permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation or permit standards lower than those required by state law. Analysis says that these are area variances. There are no mapped floodplains within the subdivision, and the proposal is not known to be afoul of state law.
So need a motion to accept the findings.
So moved.
So motion by King Vista. Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
Second by Larry Huffman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carried. Now, we're into that recommendations and stuff like that.
I guess I kept the same conditions that Aaron had originally proposed. We did, after that, we did add a little bit, and I can just read through them with the full language. So condition number 1 would be that one of the following must be achieved: a septic design by a licensed septic designer indicating options for effective use of a type 1 or 3 ISTS, including identification of primary and secondary treatment areas, or a septic design by a licensed septic designer indicating an option for effective use of a type 4 ISTS, including identification of primary treatment area. If a type 4 ISTS is used, maintainer records shall be submitted to the county annually. 2, applicable setbacks between wells and septic components shall be achieved. 3, a site plan incorporating erosion and sediment control designed by a professional engineer licensed in the state of Minnesota must accompany any future zoning application. The professional engineer shall be familiar with Houston County and the state of Minnesota policies and requirements, have good professional judgment and an understanding of erosion processes, materials, and methods of erosion control, as well as working knowledge of soil mechanics. The professional engineer shall sign off on the completed project.
Did I hear you say something about future zoning applications, or do you mean building it?
Well, a building permit would be considered a zoning application.
Okay, never mind.
Yep.
And I get it.
And then number 4, the documentation that applicants understand and plan to follow standards set forth in Houston County zoning ordinance section 29.18, tree and woodland preservation in the residential development must be submitted with future zoning applications. And I guess, being we already talked about the berm, I guess, are you guys, so this, the way this reads, you would have to have an engineer technically design that berm or sign off on that berm.
For the
So-
specific heights and locations.
Okay,
An engineer, unless he pulls a $200,000 bond with the county, once he gets the berm engineered, he's gone. You aren't gonna go back on him. He's out of here. I know that. Go ahead, Ken.
I move we grant the variances with the specific conditions stated.
I guess,
You have number 4 crossed off.
yep, so let's see, we should go through these quick. So variance to allow new structures on lots that do not meet buildable lots. 2, a variance to allow structure in bluff impact zones. 3, a variance of 40 feet to reduce top of bluff setback. I'll remove the road setback since they will be meeting that. I just left it on there in case. 5, the after the fact variance to allow creation of lots that do not have minimum area standards for wastewater, and variance to allow development of lots that do not have minimum area standards for wastewater. And 6, of the variance to allow an accessory building near the front lot line of the principal building. I said there, I stated 6 variances, but there are actually only 5.
We have a motion. We need a second.
I'll second it.
What
Second by
is the
Larry.
motion now?
Huh?
What is the motion?
What
The
do you want?
motion is just made on all the variances or on the building and everything. What's,
The
The
variances,
5 variances.
These conditions and these variances. As listed.
so they would then be able to put the house down over the hill?
Where they are proposing.
Okay, so we just want to make sure I understand.
That's what I understand, that it would do.
That's
Yes, there
fine.
might be a little tweaking in there, but
I just wanted to make sure I knew what I was voting for.
Well, yeah, that's. Any other discussion on the motion?
I think that house is way over the edge. They'd like to see that moved up. I can't approve that where you want it.
But we got a motion on the floor
We have a motion on the floor.
and second, so we'll have to vote on
We
it.
have to deal with that.
roll call.
I guess that would be the appropriate. I think that's what we have to have.
Ken Anderson,
I guess I'll vote aye.
no.
Aye.
Larry Hassner,
Aye.
Franklin Hahn,
No,
Wayne Runnigan,
No,
Ken Bisker.
Aye.
and you can note on my no, the reason, because I don't want to see that house, well, most majority rules, but that house goes down over the hill and it washes the hell out of the road down there. At least that nobody's gonna come back at me.
I think that takes care of that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Like it, but I don't like it.
I guess you should have voted against it. I'm not opposed to it. I want to see that house up from
I
that.
didn't see it up higher.
So it's no use even discussing the next one because we might just automatically approve it. Might as well automatically approve the next one then. Because the next one is a lot leveler than the one we just approved.
Not very rough, too.
No, but it's at least a lot leveler.
So
We gotta take
we're
a
going to
bathroom
break. Need a break. Yeah, I know what you
I'll
mean.
just do it for a second. We can just go look at them.
You're right.
He has a PowerPoint presentation with a few slides on, and just because it's difficult once he goes all the way through it to go back, here are just hard copies of the slide.
There's only 4 slides and we barely need to look at them for a minute. So.
the same? No, they're a little different.
Well, not be sure.
Sure.
You're in the center, you're in the center. and, You can share with Ken. Right on. Go right on.
Sure.
I'll watch it up here.
Yeah.
He's waiting, Ken.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
The,
Wayne isn't here yet.
Oh,
So,
too far at the end of the table.
Yeah.
I can't feel over the top of the table. That's
These lots are buildable, a lot easier for me to the lots are so small and they're so damn steep, that's why they haven't been built.
Right.
Because they're not building them. I think the Crescent Township, they got smart and they.
That really only talks.
Okay,
We
you
didn't lie
can
with
start.
our TV, didn't do the right way. Everybody else did this enough.
Please take notice that an application was received from the following persons for variances of setback requirements. Kieran Minahan of the Crescent Township for a variance to allow new dwellings on lots that are not buildable lots as defined by the ordinance. 2, a variance to reduce the setback required from a public road. 3, a variance to allow a structure within a bluff impact zone. 4, a variance to reduce the setback from the top of the bluff. 5, a variance to minimum sewage treatment and disposal area standards, and 6, a variance to minimum side yard setbacks. A hearing on this application will be held at the Houston County Commissioners Room on Thursday, July 22nd of 2021. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting and denying said application. Comments should be mailed to the Environmental Services Department or emailed. It must be received by Tuesday, July 13th of 2021. Comments in regard to the petition received by this date will be part of the public record and will be made available for review by the Board of Adjustment prior to the meeting. I advertise on July 7th, 2021.
Yes, Terrence. Go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, my name is Brian Woodley. I'm not the landowner. He lives 5 hours away. He asked me to be here in this place. I'm a licensed land surveyor with Johnson Schofield in Winona. And we put together a few exhibits for him to help him make his application. And that's kind of what I have on the screen now. Bluff issues are not unique to Houston County. I've been dealing with them my whole career in Waukesha County. There's probably hundreds of lots that were platted and created in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And then subsequent to that, the bluff ordinance was put in place. So there are a lot of landowners that are in the same exact same situation. So it's not going to go away anytime soon. This lot is a little bit different situation than the one that you just dealt with. The top of bluff here, we determined from not the definition of the cleared break, where you can see it. This is the definition of the 18% average slope over 50-foot segment. So if you look at the screen, there's a red dashed line by the front lot line. I'm kind of dragging the cursor along it. So per that definition, that is where top of bluff is on this lot. So when you factor in the 20-foot bluff impact zone setback, that puts the bluff impact zone out into Crescent Hills Drive. So what I did was shaded the entire bluff impact zone on the lot. So essentially, the entire lot and then some is not buildable. So you per the ordinance, you can't put a structure anywhere on any square inch of the whole lot. And so what he did was put a site plan together, which is on this here, showing where the house would be positioned. You can still see the red dash top of bluff line, but he would be utilizing the slope in the lot to build his home. And so this is where the structure would set. Just like the other ordinance, a condition would be to have a licensed engineer actually engineer the erosion control, the foundations, the retaining walls. They'll have to be retaining walls, a large block or a poured concrete retaining wall, a substantial engineering structure in order to control erosion, keep the house where it needs to be, and then stormwater management, so water's going in the correct places where it should be draining to.
Where you had them, where somebody put them 3 lats that said the retaining wall, how far to the north towards the road, to the public road, would the house be from that, or can't you tell me?
That, I believe you were looking at a lot that's 2 lots north of this one. There is another person developing a lot.
Oh, I was
saw the
looking at the
last,
wrong
right?
one?
Yep.
This lot, I don't believe anybody has staked anything on this lot. No stakes at all. Unless the landowner did it himself.
Well, according to the map we had here, we had
Wasn't there? a
right
number?
next to the person that lived there, to the east.
Well, there are only 2 houses from the turn in to this lot, if I remember right.
I thought this one was before you turned in to go to the,
Well, when you drive up, come up that steep to that road, there's a
Yeah.
turnaround,
Yeah,
and there are two houses before that.
let me,
Before
here's
this
another
lot.
map here.
yeah, I'm sure.
Let's see, that was further up north.
Yeah, so there is there is one house to the south, and then the lot to the north of this is vacant, as well as the
Right.
lot to the north of that, so. There's 2 vacant lots north of this
Okay,
one.
there's only one house in that, from that. I was thinking there were 2.
We were at the right.
Well, there's one across the street there. Isn't there one,
Well, further north, that's going north.
3 lots north, yeah. He's talking about just south of the one you can see.
I was thinking there was one further south of that, but I couldn't be wrong. Is there?
Yeah, you can kind of see its shadow.
That's
way
what I
down
was
the
thinking. They
entire
were,
block.
and they're right in the corner there. Yeah.
Mhm.
So there were 2 houses and then that's that lot between those.
But,
So when you're standing at the edge of the bluff, you can see that highway down below.
if you could look through the trees.
If you can get through the trees, yeah, that's about it. Pretty hard to really see it.
Pretty clear, right?
The
In
lot,
No,
Like, there's not a lot of underbrush or anything.
there wasn't a lot of underbrush in that area,
yeah,
but it was a lot of trees.
yeah, you can see from the aerial, that's all trees on the lot. The leaves are off in this picture, but you can almost see the individual tree stumps and trunks.
I think when you were looking at this one, or this, because I know there were stakes up closer to this area.
Well, see,
There were
there's-
stakes up there real close to where there's a parcel up for sale. That's right next to that parcel.
It's possible.
And that's what I'm kind of thinking is where we were looking at. Because I remember them when I was up there, I didn't see that.
And the utility poles are kind of pretty close to the property. don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was 2 of them there.
2 of them.
Oh, that was-
You gotta walk up, the crown of the hill is pretty open.
Yeah.
That's of that one.
Yeah, I'm reading the staff report that was put together with the variances and the findings back. I couldn't put anything together better than this. I think they did a great job. It really is sufficient for findings of fact and all the language, the legal language is in there. I think they did a great job with that. So I wouldn't have attempted to make any changes to that myself.
And I guess the question was posed to me, so I'll just bring it to all your guys' attention, but this is a 4-rod road. I did look that up, which means that there's 33 feet of right of way here, and they're proposing to build at 50, so they will be out of right.
It will be off or on?
They'll be off of right of way.
Okay.
The biggest problem, area-wise, I don't think the total area of that lot is big enough for, by our code, or without a city sewer. Total area, I might be wrong on square footage, but that's kind of what I had noted. And I looked at it. We require basically an acre of land if you have a septic.
Yeah, that's what's in all the
And
residential
this one
lots.
is, the total area is not up to that.
They do have the outlot down below Crescent Hills Drive.
Yes, but that's not even connected, so you couldn't even use that for septic.
Right.
Is that part of the?
They own it, but it's not a continued, it's an outlot.
Minimum sewage treatment variance, is that part of that?
That actually,
It's right across,
It's-
they said it was right across the road, I think, but it's listed as a non-buildable.
Yeah.
I believe what he is referencing is a different citation.
There is rock present here too.
I know that.
And if you got bedrock to anchor a house to, it's pretty hard for it to slide downhill, so.
But if it does, that road is right below.
Yeah, correct. I think that's part of the reasoning that staff, the county engineer will review the engineer site plan to make sure it's gonna work. So staff has the right to reject the plan. If the county engineer says, no, this isn't gonna work, they will reject the plan, reject the building permit.
I don't know. I think, for me, I need some guidance for this committee. How far do we go to bend over to get anything through? I mean, it's like the developers can put anything together and we'll let it go. And this one is so far, I mean, it doesn't have the, it's steep, doesn't have the square footage. It needs to be closer to the road. I mean, how far do we go? And I'm knowing that it's not popular, but how far do we go to bend to accept? Where's the point where we say that's too far to go?
Mhm.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Sure. And just speaking from a ton of experience dealing with this kind of stuff, I think the main issue is that, you know, these all were buildable lots at some point. Like today, if a developer came in and wanted to plat on this, there's no way it would ever go through to get variances to create new lots to build houses. It's just the simple fact that these were all here, and the county just has to decide, you know, are we going to try to keep these buildable lots because they were at a point buildable, and with the right engineering, it's doable. You can build a house on anything if you really wanted to. House on the Rock is a good example.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, what are the ramifications if the county decides we're just not gonna give variances for these lots,
I don't, yeah, that's
the
really
real
the question. I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
I mean, at some point, you just gotta say, wow. There's gotta be a limit to how far you can bend. I mean, that's kind of what the variance is bending the rules.
Mhm.
And there has to be at some point, an end point where you say, that's just too far.
And I think, to me, that safety net is with your county engineer and in the plan they actually come up with. If they can make something work, if it's feasible through engineering, and he's comfortable in his professional opinion, yeah, you can build this, it's gonna work. That's what I fall back on, is it, it's a safeguard. They can't just, I have my variance, I'm gonna start throwing up a house. It has to be approved by a professional.
I understand that, but
Yeah, but
where do we draw the line?
we just approved one right down over the hill, so now we're
Yeah,
gonna scrutinize this one because we approved that one, so it's a trade-off, so we let them have it, and then, whoop, we're gonna draw the line and turn this one down? No, we can't do that. We can't just,
well,
we like this one, the guy, and we don't like that guy, so we're gonna prove that guy and not this guy. That ain't the constitutes a board.
I don't see this lot as big enough to have two design septic systems.
That does fall under 15.9, which is the first variance that we're asking for. I think what you're referencing. The lots with individual sewage treatment systems, dwelling units
Yep.
with individual sewage treatment systems and water wells shall have a minimum of 43,560 square feet, which is an
Yep.
acre.
We're not even close on this
So,
lot.
but that is one of the variance requests.
That's one of the variances.
I guess if you guys want to look at it, if you look at the top of bluff and the slopes that this is proposal is looking at, they are a little different than the last one.
yeah, the last one had square footage, it was steeper. I don't know who we get direction from. Is that the board, supervisors? We go and talk to them or something? But there's gotta be a point where we say, wow, this is just bending it so.
We have to go by the zoning ordinances until the zoning ordinances are changed.
Yeah.
That's what we have to abide. Whether it's right or wrong, whether we like it or not. It's like a building permit. I'd like to build it on a building permit too, but you know what I'm saying? It's a zoning ordinance. We have to follow.
Yeah, but we're the one that bends the zoning.
I know.
zoning.
You know,
How far do we bend it? That's what I don't.
I guess it's up to you three how far you want to bend it. If a lot isn't buildable, I can't vote for a lot that isn't buildable.
I think it's important for all of us to remember that we're not contractors and we're not engineers and we're not plumbers.
Yeah.
Put in sewage systems. We don't have the expertise to nitpick these things. We have to rely on the experts. We have to rely on the engineers. We have to rely on the sewage people. We have to rely on the people that are doing the site plan. It's pointless for us to sit and try to figure out, without expertise, how to build a house on these properties. We have to make the determination, I think, whether we want to allow homeowners to build homes on properties with the proper restrictions. And like I said before, I think that our zoning people have put those restrictions there to make me feel comfortable approving these variances. But to sit here and talk about engineering things and contracting things and sewage things doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree 100%. But where is the limit?
Well,
I
that's
mean,
In the end, if something goes wrong, we're responsible.
that's true too, but I mean, I'm getting to feel like, wow, if you take anything in there, they'll approve it. I mean, this is so far out. What is it? What's the area?
I think I had 0.65 acres.
It's supposed to be an acre.
minimum.
I mean, there's every
That's where I run into the problem.
every direction that needs a variance is too close to the road. It's not a, doesn't have two septics. It's not a buildable, it doesn't have the square footage.
This is a platted subdivision? It is, right? Is a minimum, an acre minimum requirement for a platted
Yes.
subdivision?
Yeah. With the sewer system.
Oh, okay.
Under, yeah,
Yep,
Private
minimum
septic.
that's for individual septic. If you're hooked up to a city, then you can get by with a half acre.
So then we're usually dealing with one variance. And
This
these
last
are
one-
asking for
This last one
5
took
and
us right up to
6.
the edge.
Well, what we gotta decide here is if this lot is going to be big enough, if we allow the variances. If it's not gonna be big enough, then it's no use going through the staff report and all that stuff.
I would like to table it until we get some direction. I need to have some, I don't know, do we go to a board meeting maybe?
But we're supposed to, what I was told, that we make a decision, the county board cannot overrule it.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Am I wrong?
No, we're
The
fine
only
with
way,
this.
I think that can overturn our decisions. Report.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I'm not trying to be smart
That
here.
is the
I'm
way it
just-
is.
yeah.
But the essence of it is, I think what Larry's looking for is try a little more of a guidance, how much limits can we put? How far can we go? I mean, this lot is, that other one, I think, was close to a 2 acre lot, total
Yeah.
lot.
yeah, over that. And they did have some area that actually did meet, there was some buildable area, I guess. We use buildable lot and area interchangeably all the time, but they're different. Where
Yeah.
this
one-
particular lot, the top of the bluff is basically the tree line. So
Yep.
there really is limited area to build, I guess, if you're considering that. And then with slopes, there's limited area. And then just because this is a smaller lot too. that-
It's a lot smaller lot, total lot. It's kind of what bothers me.
And that bothers you because of the septic?
The septic system is, because that's part of the standard, the acreage, when you
But if you
have
had-
two septic
But
systems.
if you had an installer identify like we did with the other one, 2 areas for a septic, what's the difference?
But isn't that one of the variants? You only have one area?
No,
There's 2 on the site plan, you can see below the house.
If they have adequate septic, why is the arbitrary 43,560, important? And I
Well,
think that was, the 1 acre thing was done so that there was adequate septic, but if they have it, I'm comfortable with a variance for that if there's an adequate septic site. Otherwise, it's just an arbitrary number. But, there are other things too, but the septic thing, you've got room for it. If you got a place.
Well, I'll go on with majority. I said what I think.
Well, I said what I thought, but I think if, when I read it again, if this lot is not big enough to build on, it's no use for us to spend But I'm going through the staff stuff, is it?
No,
I mean, I'm asking, I'm not telling, I'm asking.
Well, on the other hand,
We have to go through that because that's
probably
the
need
process.
to do that.
Okay.
We have to go through the staff report,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Findings.
The findings have to be done.
We can't just arbitrarily say.
Yeah,
We could delay it. I mean,
we could table it if we wanted to and research it more. I'm not sure how much more research we're going to get out of it.
It sounds like lines are being
I'm sorry, but it's just.
I could suggest what you could do if you were to table it, to get more information, I would enlist the county engineer
Okay.
and bounce the site directly off of him. Can it work? Are there ways to make it work? He'll give you the answer. And then the other person is the county attorney. They're gonna have information not only for this one, but for all these future ones that come in.
That- and that-
What are the
that's-
ramifications of it?
Because there's probably some that are worse than this.
Yeah,
Oh, I
there
think
there are. And
So, yeah, like I said, where do we go?
in the county attorney will be able to tell you if you don't grant these variances, these are things that happen with the county. And if you do, these are
Yeah.
the things. So
Yeah.
you'll get a lot of information that way.
That's what we
Out of
need.
those two departments. And we gotta come back,
Who would be responsible for enlisting the engineer?
well, the county engineer, I don't know if you have one on
Not the
staff.
homeowner or not the lot owner, but
You have to, yeah.
Yeah, if they were gonna give you an opinion.
that would make sense.
I guess
I would,
when
be-
you're talking there now, I would like more information.
I would like an opinion from the attorney as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you, like more information, I guess, on the septic then, if we could get a soil report or something done?
I would like to have that, the
Or-
septic system, but also, the engineering, county engineer to look at it too.
If there's not a suitable soil test for a septic system, you're not going to get your building permit anyway, right? Whether we do a variance or not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just, the soil really determines what kind of system you put in. I guess
but
you
I
can
mean,
have no
You
good
can build
soil.
in a lot of senior homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah, it just adds a greater dollar amount to it.
That's the homeowner's responsibility, not ours.
That would be yes.
Right.
That's why if you guys are leaning in that direction, is there, or in tabling it for more information, is there anything else that you might like to ask?
Well, does what you talked about the soil borings have any bearing? If they can put a drain field in, or do they have to have a mound system or stuff like that? I would imagine that would tell us if there's room for a mound system, or am I wrong on that?
No,
But then-
that's what the soils tell you, is
Right,
what kind of system they'll put in.
and then we'd have to have a drawing, not necessarily, well, that could be a drawing, it's the mound system, if there's a mound system, it's gonna take up so much, you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
And the house is gonna be so much, and
But the guy, the installer will be able to determine based on soil tests, whether in fact there's room, depending on the type of system required, if it's a mound or a gravity system or whatever. By the end of the day, he's going to be able to tell you on that lot whether there's adequate space for, and it requires two septic systems.
Pretty near anything today is involved.
pretty much.
Some kind of a above ground system, yes.
But also then on the same note, then after this is all done, then if we approve it, you could build a 50 by 60 foot house or whatever the size of the house would be. Then we as a board, we say, okay, so you're going to put that size house there. And like you said, the engineer, the sewer, whatever, they could fit that in there. Then we're not second guessing, well, how is this going to work, which Larry alluded to. I mean, I go along with
I
that.
agree with Larry in a lot.
Well, and that all becomes, that's all part of the application process for the permit, isn't it? I mean, they gotta have a plan. for a septic
Well,
system.
restrictions on. for that, requiring all those things.
Right, I mean, we don't have to necessarily have final approval on anything that, they've got to get that permit through the zoning office.
Right, but where I'm coming from is the lot's too small to build on now. Can the engineer, can they position the sewer and a such a size house and get it? That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I agree, I think that's what we need. Well, we don't need to know that from my perspective, we don't need to know that to prove the variances, because if they don't have the adequate room, they're not gonna get a building permit. I mean, we're putting sort of the cart before the horse sometimes when we sit here and do this stuff. We don't necessarily, we need to rely on the experts that issue the permits.
I'll make a motion, we table it till next month.
I agree.
You're the second, right?
I'll second.
Okay,
With the understanding that we get
Yes.
an engineer's report and a report from the county attorney regarding not approving these lots.
Or
Or
where,
not approving
what
variances.
we have, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
where we draw the line.
Yeah, what happens? What happens if we fail to grant variances on these lots?
Yeah, somebody's got money, but
Yeah, that's right. And as a county, I think we have an obligation
I
to
agree.
try to work with
I
these
agree.
people, because
Yeah. But I'd be real happy if they say, yeah, keep going the way you are. If we can get it fit on there, they tell me to do that, I'll say, I'm okay with that.
well,
We have a motion,
We have a
to table,
question.
motion and second to table, so I guess that's on a non-debatable motion, so we all in favor, say aye. Opposed? That motion carried. And the only,
Sorry.
no, I think,
It's better than no.
we have the minutes of last month's meeting that have to be approved. Or whatever. Things.
How you doing, Neil?
Need approval of the.
How are you in
minutes.
this?
Motion.
How are you in
to
the-
approve? Or not, wait, Frank, I'm sorry.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, second
Not
by
this one.
Wayne.
Not this one?
I just don't want you to stop it.
We have a motion
The
and
recording is
second
typed
to
in.
the minutes of the May meeting.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That
Oh,
motion
I-
carried. And
I move we adjourn.
we are adjourned.